Welcome to our Bowl Special. I'm your host, Thomas Frank Carr, the BWI Daily, coming to you on Black Friday. You're out shopping for your early Christmas presents, right? Well, we're going to help plan your early holiday travel plans with our Bowl Special. I've got the experts with me, and truly, this is one where I'm relying on Ryan Snyder and Greg Pickel, because when it comes to this bowl projection stuff, not only do I not have a good grasp on where everyone else is in the college football landscape, but I don't know how any of the bowls work. So my experts are here to help me out, and hopefully you as well know where Penn State is likely to go in this postseason. So Greg, Ryan, thanks for coming on the show, and thanks for being here. Greg, happy Black Friday to you. How was Thanksgiving?
Everything was good. I hope everyone had lots of food, won all their NFL bets, and are ready for a big day of football and a big weekend of football. A lot of exciting games, and obviously it caps it for us with Penn State, Michigan. So looking forward to it, T. Frank. Good to be with you.
Greg is the proud recipient of 2 Thanksgiving dinners yesterday, so he's on the mend from that today. Ryan, I know you've got the Christmas tree up already. How are the kids in the holiday season?
Christmas tree's been up for a week, man. 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. We could have put it up on Halloween and they would have been happy. So it's good.
Well, that's good. So Penn State is heading into a game with Michigan State. We'll get into that in Ryan Snyder's Best Bets. Greg is here to help out with that. He is contributed to our phenomenal record, I'd say, at this point. We'll get to that at the end of the show, but that game is going to inform everything we're talking about to start the show, which is Penn State's bowl projection. And what we're going to do is run down the top 3 possibilities that Penn State can get to depending on if they win or lose the game upcoming this weekend. So that's going to be how we're going to go through this. Is the most likely to maybe an outside chance, but a still realistic possibility. Guys, is there anything else we need to do to set this up?
No, let's do it.
All right, so let's start with this bowl game that I think is going to be a fun one for a lot of people if Penn State can get to it, and that is the Music City Bowl. This bowl is in Nashville, of course. SEC versus Big Ten, December 30th at 2 p.m. It's not too far of a trip, and the opponents that we'll get to here in a little bit might be some fun ones, especially considering what they've become over the last couple of years. So we'll start with Nashville and the Music City Bowl. Guys, what are you looking at for this particular matchup, and why is this one such a high priority that it's our number 1 bowl? Greg, start with you.
Well, I mean, I think that when you look at how these things shake out, that there's sort of pods in each conference, the 3rd from the SEC, the 4th from the SEC, the 4th from the Big Ten, the 3rd from the Big Ten, et cetera. These games that we're going to talk about all kind of take those teams in, even down to the 5th and maybe 6th, depending on how things shake out with different alliances across the sport with various bowl games. So, this Nashville game, the Music City Bowl, which I don't believe Penn State has ever played in, has kind of been one that Penn State has been pointed to by experts for a few weeks now as things have kind of started to shake out. So this game, if Penn State, this is one of the ones that Penn State could get into if they win and if they lose against Michigan State on Saturday. I can imagine that the Nashville people who kind of run this game would be pretty excited to welcome Penn State to town. There would obviously be the connection of James Franklin making his first trip back there since leaving Vanderbilt, which of course is where he came to, or what he was before he came to Penn State, rather. And so there's definitely some intrigue there. And they would obviously see an SEC opponent, which is something that, we've seen them handle both during the regular season and the bowl season as well during the James Franklin era.
So Music City, a bowl that Penn State has never been to, but one that I think is pretty appealing. Ryan, wouldn't you say this is a pretty appealing bowl of the ones that we're going to talk about in terms of, I think, the up-and-comingness of not only Nashville, but the opponents that they could have, which include Arkansas. Kentucky would be a very interesting possibility if that happened, and of course, Missouri is in there as well. Is this a bowl that you think Penn State fans would like to go to?
It's Nashville. Who wouldn't want to go to Nashville and party for a couple days before New Year's, right? Yeah. And the other one, I mean, we'll get into it. That's an awesome party spot too. I mean, in a way, if Penn State wins and things all fall perfectly, they go to the place that's the least fun, So it's, in some ways, if things don't go perfect tomorrow, this is a pretty good backup plan. I don't know if you want to call it that way, but Penn State's never been in this game. I think it falls at a great time. day before New Year's Eve, which I think Penn State fans will like a lot. And to me, it's really the opponent. Like if they got Arkansas in this game, I think that'd be a lot of fun. Arkansas's on the rise. Missouri, meh. I don't know if Penn State fans will be into that. I saw, Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, is Tennessee an option for this game? I think Tennessee's been mentioned as maybe an option, or is that kind of if they fall off? I mean, Tennessee would be a fun one. To me, if Arkansas, Tennessee for this game, I think Penn State fans would be interested in it. Kentucky too. I mean, obviously Will Levis situation would be great, but I'm not sure if Kentucky could fall to this. But Arkansas or Tennessee would be awesome in this game, I think.
Now, a lot of this has to do
because sorry, Keith, Frank.
I was just going to say a lot of this has to do obviously with how the Big Ten and the SEC shake out, and I wanted to go to you, Greg, with your thoughts on that and what Ryan just asked you.
Well, it's kind of a mess because I think Tennessee is, if it wasn't in Tennessee, it would be a school that would, qualify for this game. I'm not sure how eager they would be to play basically right up the road, even though it would be a super home field advantage for them. So, I've seen them predicted to the Gator Bowl and to some other places, the Mayo Bowl, I think, if it still exists. So,
the Mayo Bowl.
The Mayo Bowl, buddy, I love it. But yeah, I mean, that's what's kind of messy here. I mean, if you look at some of these predictions that, it can be these bowls can be kind of anywhere between the third best SEC team and the sixth or the seventh. And this weekend is going to shape a lot of that, and preference shapes a lot of it. I think that the one thing people forget in this conversation is once you get outside the New Year's Six bowls and the college football playoff, of course, and even some of the upper tier bowls, it becomes a kind of where does your school want to go and where do the reps, which reps are pushing harder to get you. There's a little bit more, I think, negotiation that goes on than what people realize.
A little more politicking in that.
Pushing. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so, that makes this a little bit more challenging. Again, Tennessee is probably a great example of this. If the Tennessee Brass goes to, let's say they're based on the way the pecking order works, they are the most logical SEC team to go to the Music City Bowl. But they go to those organizers and they go to the SEC and say, we don't want to play here because we want to take our kids for the first time in 2 years to somewhere outside of Tennessee for that experience and a bowl game not in our home state. I think they're probably going to get their wish granted. And then that kind of mixes and matches everything up again. So, and there's also the fact of it too, at one point there was a lot of the Pinstripe Bowl. Let's just forget about that. That's not going to happen for Penn State. I'd be stunned. But, one thing about that is, again, they were there in 2014. So it's been a while, but these bowls love getting teams that they haven't had before or in a really long time because fans might be more likely to go if it's somewhere they haven't been before. So I think that's something to keep in mind too. It's a messy kind of a process until you really are able to sit down on Sunday and clean things up and figure out who falls where after Saturday.
What is Ryan, and I don't know if you know this, and this is something I'm interested in as well, like what is the bowl pecking order? Like, how do the bowls themselves decide how this goes, too? And which ones have more clout and influence? To Greg's point, I would never consider the Pinstripe Bowl to have any sort of clout to get Penn State if they're not in a situation where they were allowed to go to the bowl game for the first time in a couple of years at mid-season. Like, that was very much a let's get back into the game sort of bowl. The Pinstripe Bowl doesn't sort of have that clout, I would imagine, right?
No, I mean, that's towards the bottom for Big Ten teams. I mean, so we were talking about the SEC, right? Let's start just kind of with their affiliations. I mean, obviously, whoever wins the SEC goes to the playoff, right? That's going to happen. We know that. And there's potential for two, especially if Alabama were to upset Georgia. But the pecking order for the SEC is always the Sugar Bowl #1 and the Citrus Bowl #2. And the Citrus Bowl pretty much, for the most part, is always Big Ten versus SEC. I believe Notre Dame can get there too, depending on how things shake out. And then from there, it's kind of, as Greg was explaining, a little bit of a wish-wash of who gets exactly the next best team. But I would say the tier one for SEC is the Mayo Bowl. That's a great name. The Liberty Bowl. The Outback Bowl would actually probably be that'd probably be the third one, Greg, I would say. So we'll say Outback Bowl, Gator Bowl, and then Music City Bowl. Those are kind of all 5 of those are kind of in there. Did I say the Texas Bowl too? I think the Texas Bowl is another one that's I think that's always SEC versus Big 12. So that's kind of the order, the top tier ones, I guess you would say, for the SEC. Mm-hmm. And then for the Big 10, of course, the Rose Bowl is always the top one, right? Yep. We expect Ohio State to end up in the playoff. So I would think maybe Michigan right now is probably on pace for a Rose Bowl, depending on maybe what happens in the Big Ten championship.
And the Rose Bowl is not in the college football playoff transition this year, right? I know that it rotates between the New Year's Six. They're not in this year as far as one of the college football playoff games, correct?
I don't believe so. No, I don't. Right, Greg? I don't believe they're in the rotation this year. I don't have that off the top of my head, but I don't believe they are. But I'll say this: the Big Ten definitely has a firm order. Yeah, the Big Ten definitely has a firm order. Rose Bowl, number 1. Citrus Bowl, number 2. Outback Bowl, number 3. And then it goes Las Vegas, Music City, Pinstripe, number 6, and then the Guaranteed Rate Bowl. I don't even know where that's at, but that's number 7. And then the Red Box was in there, but I think the Red Box is no longer around, right, Greg? I think that bowl got
correct.
Mixed.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. So, but there is a firm order for what the Big Ten wants to send its schools, and that's kind of where Penn State's in that 4-5 range right now. And if everything were to fall perfectly, they could maybe jump up to number 3. But again, it's Citrus Bowl 2, Outback Bowl 3, and Las Vegas Bowl 4, which the Las Vegas Bowl is new kind of this year, by the way. Used to always be one of the first bowl games between a Pac-12 team and a Mountain West team. But with the Raiders building a new stadium there, the Big Ten and the Pac-12 kind of, they have a alliance, I guess, now with that, and that's where they're going to send their 4th best team. So we're going to get into that. Sorry, I know I spoiled it.
That's all right. What we have here is the Orange Bowl and the Cotton Bowl this year are the college football playoff bowls, and then the national championship is in Indianapolis. I was not expecting that. All right. Well, there you go. It's within driving distance if Penn State fans want to go check it out. So that sets the scene for a lot of this, and I appreciate you guys giving us the lay of the land, and that's the important thing, because that's going to get into what the next couple bowls could be, including what you mentioned, another great party spot for Penn State football fans if they want to go to a bowl game, and one that I don't think Penn State has been to, and that would be the Las Vegas Bowl. That bowl is the next one we're going to be talking about here, as Penn State has the opportunity to go to. This is the one that I think most experts have them as a part of. Las Vegas Bowl, Big Ten and Pac-12, December 30th, 7:30 Pacific time. So if there's a bowl I'm rooting against, guys, it's this one. The Las Vegas Bowl going live, and if I have my math right, and I'm usually terrible at time zone changes, 7:30 Pacific time is 10:30 Eastern. I know you guys, we have to stay up to watch it.
Yeah, terrible.
Would you stay up to watch this if
terrible.
you had to?
I don't want that.
So how does this work out? Ryan, how does this game work out as far as if Penn State wins or loses? This is the most logical, as Penn State would if Penn State lost the game to Michigan State, correct? That's how this one feels to me.
Is that? They really feel, Music City and Las Vegas feel kind of 50-50, right? Because it's not completely in Penn State's hands. Depends on what happens, I think, with Wisconsin and Iowa. They're all kind of, this is hard to predict right now because there's a lot that has to play out on Saturday. So, but this bowl will be awesome, right? Who doesn't want to go out to Vegas? It's been not the best of seasons, I guess you would say, but I think this would be a pretty good spot for fans to go out there for a couple of days. What day is it? I'm sorry, you just pronounced it. What day is that? The December 30th?
December 30th. Yep, that's December 30th.
Yeah, so it would be the night capper. Obviously the Music City Bowl will be on ESPN earlier in the day. So, but it's really about the opponents here.
This
UCLA,
one doesn't.
Arizona State.
Yeah, this one doesn't feel as interesting to me, and it's because they're all Pac-12 teams that aren't Oregon, Utah, or I'll say USC just because of the color of their uniforms. Not that they're good, but it's kind of the mid-tier of the Pac-12, which is a largely invisible group of football teams to most people on the East Coast. Is that fair, Greg, to say?
Yeah, absolutely it is. And I think that so over the last few years of doing this, Penn State at times, the Cheez-It Bowl was one they've kind of been pointed to. The Guaranteed Rate Bowl was one they've kind of been pointed to. The Cheez-It Bowl, wonderful late night spectacle that's now no longer an option for Penn State. But Yeah, I mean, the one hesitation I've always had with Penn State going to a West Coast Bowl, and it's why I think they haven't gone to one yet, is what you guys are talking about. The TV partners, ESPN owns almost all of these other bowl games, and if not, they have a big hand in the contracts that go with these games, even if it's not the Las Vegas Bowl. I'm going to check here and see what TV channel that's on. But my point is that
it's on ESPN.
ESPN, I don't think, it's an ESPN Events Bowl, which means they own it. So, does ESPN want to rely on Penn State fans staying up till 2 a.m. basically to watch Penn State UCLA or Penn State Arizona State? We know that there's a lot of diehard fans out there, including the ones listening to this one, that will try their best. But, that game, it does help, I guess, a little bit when it falls. But for some people, that next day is going to be a work day. So for ESPN, I'm not totally sure if it's in their best interest to have Penn State in this game. They're going to have a Big Ten team anyway. But would you want to have Penn State in Nashville at 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern time and get those ratings and know that you're probably punting to some extent on the Las Vegas Bowl anyway, or do you want to send Penn State out there and hope things work out? You got to keep all that in mind too. So again, that's what makes this kind of a very difficult thing to always put your finger on, even the day of Selection Sunday, because again, there's a lot of factors that go into this, and you can't rule out the one that says ESPN. When you get into this tier of bowl game, ESPN almost owns all of them.
Yeah.
And they're going to look out for their best interest as much as anything else. And considering what they paid to own these games and televise these games, they probably should get a bigger say than just about anybody.
And that part, Ryan, this is the part that when it comes into the money, and as Greg is pointing out, like the influences outside of the win-loss and all that stuff, I have a hard time when Penn State has, I think they're part of at least one of the top viewed programs in college football this season in terms of viewers on a weekend. Penn State, Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, both were massive draws on audience. I don't think you're putting Penn State against Arizona State at 10:30 at night. That doesn't seem like that's a great draw for ESPN to do. How do you view that part to be part of the conversation?
I would agree, and that's why a lot of people are saying it would be Purdue or Minnesota. A lot of people
because
are
kind of on it anyway.
Yeah. So it makes complete sense. I get it. I just want to go to Vegas for a couple of days.
I mean, look, right. If they have to play in Vegas, there's worse things in the world. It's not like they're playing in Boise, Idaho, or something. I mean, it's a brand new stadium. I'm sure the bowl gifts that the players would get are probably pretty good considering the connections to this game. So, I mean, don't underestimate from the Penn State side of this. And again, we've said if you're jumping in mid-show, we just need to be clear that Penn State might have some say, but not a ton in this process. The one thing is, not the worst thing in the world for recruiting to take your brand to the West Coast and get some time out on the West Coast on the news and social media and things like that. So that might be something else to keep in mind here as well.
So quick question, Greg, about that. What other bowls that aren't at midnight Eastern time are there on the West Coast outside of the Rose Bowl? Everyone knows the Rose Bowl. We're talking about the Las Vegas Bowl. What are the other places and possibilities maybe that we're not going to consider for this show, but just other bowls that would be ideal on the West Coast for Penn State to do exactly what you just said?
Yeah, the Arizona Bowl's out there. That's, I think, that's usually a MAC school. The Sun Bowl's out there.
I can chime in.
Yeah.
I have the list up here, Greg, if it helps you. I mean, the Guaranteed Rate Bowl, the one we were talking about. Yeah. That's in the Diamondback Stadium. Is that the one that's operated by the Fiesta Bowl? You know what I'm talking about? Remember we were out the Fiesta Bowl, and this their commission operates this. And then there's the Cheez-It Bowl. Is the Cheez-It Bowl or is the Cheez-It Bowl the one?
One of those two are under that umbrella. Yes.
One of those are.
We're just making it up as we go here.
I'm sorry. Time out.
Okay.
Time out. I figured it out. The Cheez-It Bowl is the one that used to be the Champ Sports Bowl, and that's in Orlando. The Cheez-It used to sponsor the Guaranteed Rate Bowl, which was in Phoenix.
I feel like
that's why we're mixing it up there.
I feel like I'm watching season 2 of The Witcher already, or like season 4 Game of Thrones. I cannot keep any of this stuff straight. And I promised myself we were not going to talk about the Meineke Car Care Bowl. So if we get to that point, I'm just turning everything off.
But the Holiday Bowl That's another big one out in San Diego.
Yep.
And then, I mean, San Antonio doesn't really count, but San Antonio is the Alamo Bowl. And I know it's not the West Coast, but that's another late night bowl game. I think it's like a 9:30 or so kickoff. So those are a couple of them. I'm sure there's a couple. I mean, there's the Hawaii Bowl, but that that's for smaller teams. So those three kind of feel, or those four, I guess, are the ones that impact Big Ten or some teams that are out on the East Coast, I guess.
Let's get to our final bowl game, because I think this is the one that everyone here on the show has been telling me, don't forget about, don't rule out this one. And it's one that Penn State hasn't been to in a while, and one that I think Penn State fans are much more familiar with and comfortable with, and that would be a trip to Florida for the Outback Bowl. This bowl, SEC versus Big Ten, there are some other machinations involved. We'll get to that. This one, a January 1 game at noon. This is right in the wheelhouse of Penn State football fans. This feels like, and I think we'll get to this, Penn State has to win this upcoming weekend, and a couple things have to break their way for them to get to the Outback Bowl, which is what I want you guys to be kind of fill us in on when it comes to that. So the Outback Bowl, you guys have both said to me, don't count this one out. We put it last because it's the one that maybe there's more things that have to get involved. So, Ryan, give me why you shouldn't count this bowl out, first off.
Because Penn State hasn't played there since 2011. So, when we were talking earlier about bowl reps, wanting to mix things up, I mean, that would be a big thing for me. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, but I would think that the Outback Bowl would be very interested in Penn State. I think Iowa's played here 3 times since the last time Penn State has played here. And I believe Wisconsin's only been here once. So Wisconsin could be the team that kind of trips that up, I believe. But to me, I mean, a lot of it has to do with an 8-4 team plays in this bowl game regularly. So if they can win, get to 8-4, that would be very appealing. Of course, a lot of it's going to depend on, Ohio State gets the playoff, which means, Michigan can't upset them. And then Michigan State would get a New Year's 6 game, so they're in. And then, of course, whoever wins the West then I think would probably end up playing in the Citrus Bowl. So just a lot has to play out still. But, yes, with a win here, the fact they haven't been there in a decade, the fact that the teams they're kind of competing against, again, Iowa and Wisconsin, have played there 4 times over the last 10 years, that's where this fits for Penn State and why I think they would be appealing. Greg, so, tell me if I'm wrong.
Part of that, I want to just follow up quickly. When it comes to travel for teams, Penn State is known for having a really good traveling fan base that goes to the bowl game, especially if they're a good bowl. Do you know off the top of your head if Wisconsin and Iowa have that similar sort of let's say profile as a fan base of guys that they'll show up and they'll make it look good on TV? Because it's not necessarily important to the bowl to make money, but it is important for ESPN to have a good environment, and Penn State typically provides that on television. Is that something that you know about those other 2 teams that you mentioned? Okay.
Yeah,
really.
I would say.
I don't follow. I mean, they're Big Ten teams. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, that's kind of my thought, too. They're Big Ten teams, so they usually represent pretty well. The tricky thing for Penn State when we get into the Outback Bowl talk is just that they have to beat Michigan State. Well, does that knock Michigan State out of the New Year's 6 conversation then? If it does, then maybe they're Outback Bowl bound. If it doesn't, but Wisconsin wins its final regular season game and then it puts on a good showing at against Ohio State, presumably, they could be Outback Bowl bound. Someone has to go to the Citrus Bowl, of course. And I guess it comes down to this: if the Big Ten doesn't get a second team into a New Year's 6 bowl, this becomes a very almost impossible place for Penn State to go. Mm-hmm. If Big Ten does get a second one in, then that would open the door for this potentially being the case with the win over Michigan State. But yeah, it's interesting because we say that Penn State needs to win to have this be a possibility, but at the same time, that could knock Michigan State out of the Fiesta Bowl, which would then take, that chance for them to go to this game out of play for the most part. So we shall see here. I mean, again, I think the only prediction right now is from Mike Huguenin of On3 Sports. He runs a national team for our network at On3, and he has Penn State going to the Outback Bowl. He has Wisconsin going to the Penn State to the Outback, Michigan State to the Fiesta, Michigan to the Rose, And then you have, I'm sorry, so that would be 3 Big Ten teams. Let me back up there. 3 Big Ten teams. They basically need one of those Big Ten teams to go to the Fiesta Bowl, and that opens this pathway for Penn State to go to the Outback Bowl. But, again, is Michigan State as appealing, even with just 3 losses, if they lose to Penn State for that Fiesta Bowl spot? So that's why you're seeing fewer and fewer people say that's a realistic place for Penn State to go. However, the path is certainly there. It's just a very narrow one.
You mentioned what you can find over.
Hold on 1 second, T. Frank.
Sure.
Hold on 1 second. What happens if Wisconsin somehow upsets in the Big Ten championship game? Doesn't that open a path too? Don't you think, Greg?
Yeah, because then you would have
or whoever going. Yeah.
Oh yeah, because it would be Ohio State to the Rose. It would be Wisconsin to the Rose Bowl, Ohio State to the Fiesta Bowl. And then it would go from there. So yeah, I mean, presumably it does, but it's just, again, I think you just need, at this point, you need Ohio. The best path would be Ohio State in the playoff, Michigan to the Rose Bowl, Michigan State to the Fiesta Bowl, and then you're talking Penn State, Iowa, or Wisconsin for the Outback Bowl. Penn State beat Wisconsin. They should have beat Iowa if Sean Clifford does not get hurt. Anyone who wants to argue that point, it's not worth the time. So, right. I mean, I think it's a fairly reasonable claim to make. Now, you could also say that Wisconsin should have beat Penn State, and I think you'd have some merit there based on how that game played out. But regardless, there's a reason that the other 2 games that we started with are the ones that we started with, and
right.
because they're the 2 most likely ones at this point.
So you mentioned On3. Greg has been doing this for the last month or so with having an updated bowl projection for Penn State football. If you want to check that out, bluewhiteillustrated.com. And, of course, if you want to subscribe so you get all the information, all the insider information as well. This week, huge news dropped about James Franklin's new contract and some of the promises he got from the university. We've been covering that the entire season with Nate Bauer, doing some great work on that, how it affects recruiting. Both Ryan and Greg have been doing stuff there, and it's Black Friday, so you get the Black Friday special, just $1 to sign up for On3, and you get 12 months free, not just for yourself. Sign up for a friend. You can get your entire family a subscription to On3, and if you have a regular-sized family, that's less than $10. So sign up, $1 special going on, bluewhiteillustrated.com. You can check it out there. We have a link to the sign up in the description of all our YouTube videos, so you don't even have to go that far. Just scroll down, click on it, $1 Black Friday special. You get 12 months of access. We'll be going into the bowl conversation next year, and you'll still be getting that for just $1. So out of these 3, and we have them ranked in the order of likelihood, in the order of what we think is going to happen. Which one do you think will do the most good for Penn State as far as their postseason prestige, their postseason recruiting, and all of that stuff that kind of ties into why you want to go to these bowl games, even if you're not in the college football playoff? Ryan, do you have a preference for that view of these 3 bowls? Doesn't matter.
I don't think it really matters at this point. No, I mean you get to the playoff, get to the New Year's 6 games. They help a little bit. Teenagers aren't. I mean, I know this probably sounds weird because these guys are going to play at this level, but most of these guys aren't watching December 30th bowl games at 3:00. Just the honest to God truth. Even some of Penn State's commits, they won't even really. They're just teenagers, man. They have better things to do in their lives, and I know and it's one thing that always kind of surprised me a little bit. And I'm sure. Let me clarify. I'm sure a bunch of Penn State's commits will be watching it, but a lot of the 2023 guys who are still undecided, they got Penn State in their top handful of schools. They're going to go hang out with their friends on December 30th. I mean, that's just really the one thing I've learned over the years is I ask guys all the time how much they pay attention to this stuff. And it feels like 80% of the time they're like, meh, whatever.
It's because they're not watching Ryan Snyder's Best Bets. They're not degenerates that are getting their insider information. They need to get that. That's for later in their life.
Shame on them, quite frankly. Yeah, shame on them.
Do you have any thoughts on that, Greg? Do you have any preference? Do you think that for Penn State, if there is a preference here?
No, not really. Okay. Obviously, everyone likes to end the season on a winning note. So you prefer to go to the place that gives you the best chance to do that. I think playing one of those Pac-12 teams might be that. Though UCLA would be tough. I think that would be a tough matchup for Penn State. So, I mean, to me, I think look, we're in the news business. We're in the business of the most compelling story. Obviously, Penn State and Sean Clifford facing Kentucky and Will Levis would be fascinating for a number of reasons. I would get really tired of talking about that after a while, but that would be interesting. And ultimately, again, I think that the biggest thing you want to do to bowl is just win, and you want to get extra practice for guys like Landon Tangwall and Jalen Reed and all these other guys, Jamari Booten, that we've talked about, that are going to have to be key contributors for Penn State next year. So I think that, that's obviously something to watch as well.
Any final thoughts on our bowl selection special?
If you made me pick today, I would say, I'm sorry, T. Frank, I cut you off.
Okay.
If you made me pick right now, it would be Nashville. If you made me make a selection right now, it would be Nashville. But I might feel differently. That's my thought based on how I think this weekend's going to play out. I certainly might feel differently if things don't go as planned as I'm thinking they will on Saturday. But it's not Saturday; it's Friday, so time will tell.
We've kind of run down the Big Ten East and the Big Ten, the top of the Big Ten West that matters in terms of how this might shake out. I think we all kind of view that picture the same way. So, Ryan, do you have any final thoughts before we head on to the next thing?
Yeah, I mean, Greg made some pretty good points there. I mean, I kind of thought Penn State was a little bit into it more for the Outback Bowl, but I don't think there's any chance Penn State goes to the Outback Bowl with 7-5. I don't ever see that happening. Yeah. And then again, if you beat Michigan State, it knocks everybody down more. I didn't really think about that as much when, over the last couple of days or even prepping for this. So, yeah, I don't know if the Outback Bowl is as realistic as I kind of thought it would be. So Music City definitely makes the most sense for television reasons and the fact that Penn State's never been there. So they would be a very appealing option. So Nashville, baby, get your country boots on. Let's go.
Of these three games, I am very much personally rooting for not 10:30 at night for a kick time. Even if I'm out on the West Coast for the holidays, which is the plan, I still don't like that idea. So I'm rooting for a nice regular time for us to watch and cover Penn State football. And hopefully this has been helpful to fans because, like I said to start this part of the show, I don't know how most of this stuff goes, how it works out. So going into the weekend, I hope this gives you a good picture of where Penn State might land and the reasons why, because usually it just shows up in my inbox that they're going to certain bowl games, and I don't really have a good perspective on that because the inner workings of it are a bit mysterious. So hopefully we've explained those and revealed some of the mysteries to you, and then we'll just move on and make you some money this weekend because it's great that we have both of you here today, both of you on our final best bets of the season, for the regular season, that is. You both contributed to this overall record, which I think is phenomenal. We have our overall season record for Ryan Snyder's best bets with some pinch hitting from Greg Pickel. Our overall record this season, it's going to pop up here, 41-28, considering only a couple weekends ago we were 500 on the show. Last week, 4-1. This is our full week of games. Alabama at Auburn, Oregon State at Oregon, Wisconsin at Minnesota, Oklahoma at Oklahoma State, and Penn State at Michigan is our lineup. I'll throw this graphic up a couple of times as we discuss the games, but let's get it started. I know you both contributed to this particular lineup, so the Iron Bowl, who wants to go first on the Iron Bowl?
Oh, you, Greg. I mean, this is your pick,
That's all me.
This is yours, Greg?
Me. Yeah, so the way Ryan sent those, that I was a little bit confused pre-show about what he was getting, and I thought you were taking the other side. I was really excited to argue with you about it, but Alabama to me, guys,
I like your side. For the record, I like what you have. For the record, go on.
They just haven't had that killer instinct, they just don't put teams away. I feel like, at least recently. The way that we kind of expect Alabama to do. I mean, I look at some of these games and, there for the longest time over the last few years, Alabama was a lock, especially if it was close in the second half. You could feel in the first half, you could feel pretty confident in the second half about putting, a backing behind Alabama to kind of coast and win comfortably in the second half. Just really hasn't been that way this year. So I think it's too many points in a game like this. Auburn, you would imagine, you would assume would be fired up. They've been a little bit more impressive of late. I just think this is way too many points in this rivalry game, and I will take as many of them as you're willing.
Ryan, what are your thoughts on this game? You said you like his point here. Yeah,
I feel like this spread should be 15. It should be over two TDs, but 19 is definitely too high. I mean, my only thing is just is TJ Finley ready for the big moments? He's kind of been a little shaky. He was shaky against South Carolina last weekend. But if this was a game I looked at very closely, and I was trying to pick some of the bigger games this week. I didn't take it, but I was happy to see that Greg did. And I would lean that way too. I mean, Auburn's a decent team, and you know, I still expect them to be able to run the ball a decent amount. I know Alabama's defense is strong, but they're not elite. So I just think it's too many points for this kind of rivalry game. I could see Alabama winning by 2 touchdowns, but covering 19, I'm not so sure about that.
There you go. Penn State beat Auburn. And we're predicting Auburn to hang with Alabama, so therefore, by the transitive property, Penn State could hang with Alabama. That's what both of you are saying. That's what I'm hearing. So that game is in the books. Oregon State at Oregon is our next one. I'll throw this up again. Now, Ryan, this is yours, right? What are you looking at? You
Correct.
always are going with these West Coast games. You're picking these Pac-12 darlings. What do you got here in this one?
There's a reason for that.
So
T-Frank, there's a reason for that. He likes to finish his workday with a little bit of action after a Penn State Saturday. It's a nice way to unwind. That's why it's always the Pac-12.
Yeah, we don't get to watch any other games, right? I mean,
it's true.
This is the one time I get to really watch them. So, so of course, Oregon -7. That's pretty high, in my opinion. But I'm not actually going to take the spread here. I'm going to take the over 61. And my whole thought here is that both of these defense cannot stop the run. Oregon State is 107th in the nation in stuff rate. Oregon is 74th in the nation in stuff rate. And both of these teams are just running the ball pretty well right now. The one concern I do have is that they're not tempo teams. You know, they're kind of in the latter half of tempo, and if you're running the ball a lot, obviously the clock gets down. But what made me kind of take this pick, I guess, really in the end, was just that both of these defenses are really struggling, not necessarily in the red zone, but when you get into opponent territory. I mean, I wish I had the number in front of me. I think Oregon State's allowing a pretty high percentage. If you get across that 50, you're getting some sort of points out of it. So I'm going to take the over 61 in this one. I really was kind of looking at Oregon. So I have an Oregon future for the bet over 9. So I'm behind the scenes. I'm definitely rooting for Oregon to win this game. It's very important for me. But I don't know if I could take Oregon -7. They haven't been great at covering at home this year. Yeah. So but I'll take over 61. I could see a 35-31 kind of game here. Is
there some sort of hangover in this particular game after getting shellacked by Utah on the road, Greg?
I would hope not. There's a lot on the line here for Oregon, though. You know, seriously, they still have a lot to play for here, so I would hope not. But
from a confidence standpoint, they didn't look good, and at no point were they competitive in that game. And that's the second time, I think, this year where they've really struggled in key situations. Greg, I know this isn't your game. Do you have any thoughts on this game in particular, or Oregon in general?
Not particularly. I mean, I'm really interested to get Ryan's perspective on Saturday as he's rooting both of these in. That's probably what I am most interested in.
I'm rooting Oregon way harder than this, so to clarify.
It'll probably never make the light of day, but I do believe back when I did the podcast for Ryan a few Fridays ago, I mentioned my dislike of his deciding to bet totals and sides in the same game.
Yeah.
I will now extend that to betting other sides of win totals in regular season finale. So add that to the list, buddy.
I did that 2 times. Dude, in real life, I never do that. I did it twice earlier this year, and I was 3-1 in those games. So thank you very much.
Well, look at that.
Moving.
Look at that. Moving on. Next game that I think is very important when it comes to the weekend and the bowl projection we just talked about. We went through Alabama and Auburn, Oregon State, Oregon, Wisconsin at Minnesota. Wisconsin, a touchdown favorite on the road. Greg, this is your game, or was this one that you both picked here?
I don't know if Ryan. I don't think Ryan had. I'm not sure if you.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you had any opinion on this or not. I just think Wisconsin's playing really good. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that somehow I would not have expected to have said this a couple of weeks ago, but they almost seem better in the run game without Ches Malusi, who is, of course, out for the year now. So
because he's only okay. He was only an okay back.
Yeah, you do have a wrong opinion about that. I forgot. Yes. September feels like it was ages ago, but I do now recall your thoughts on him. Yes. So, I mean, and I'm just not a big fan of the boat rowers ever. So you put those two things together. I just think Wisconsin is playing really good football right now. And it just, to me, feels like the kind of game where they, it might take a little bit of time to get over that 7, but I think they're going to get over it.
I'm going to give just a quick analysis here because I've watched a couple Minnesota games. Of the Big Ten teams I've viewed this season, the only one that infuriates me more than Michigan's offense and their offensive philosophy, where Jim Harbaugh just stuck on a classic power running game on top of a spread offense because football, would be PJ Fleck's offense. Their base offense is 6 offensive linemen. It is a disrespect to modern football, and it doesn't work. Like, sure, it works to beat certain teams, and you can go and you can just run over Maryland. But then you're going to lose. Like, the reason I said this into one of our message board members earlier this week is the reason that the spoiler makers are a thing is because they play an actual offense with a football thrower that consistently throws the football down the field. You have Tanner Morgan throw the ball 13 times in a game. You're asking to lose to Illinois. End of story. So in this particular game, Wisconsin has the better quarterback. They have a slightly updated version of a classic Big Ten offense. I'd pick them by 10 or 14 because Minnesota is stupid. They are a stupid team. That's how I feel about PJ Fleck's offense. So anyone else have any other analysis?
I don't know if I'd say Wisconsin has the better quarterback in this game. I'd still kind of lean towards Tanner Morgan personally. I mean, Mertz has just lost me entirely too much money this year. But let me just say one last thing. Braylon Allen, running back, Wisconsin, hell of a player, man.
Yeah.
I mean, why this guy was not rushing the ball all the time earlier in the year. He's averaging 7.6 yards per carry. I like Greg's play here a good bit with -7. I would lean towards that side as well. So Greg, you did a good job, man. I don't have anything to argue with you about. Sorry about that.
We'll see if you still feel that way on Sunday. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah,
man, we're going to finish with a winning record, so I'm good. I'm happy.
And I should say, you're right about Graham Mertz, but like the situation he's operating is a better system than, hey, it's 3rd and 8. Tanner Morgan, just do it. Just go get us the 8 yards, because we helped you out so much on 1st and 2nd down. Oklahoma at Oklahoma State, -4 for Oklahoma State at home. This is a big game, obviously. The Big 12 always. This game is a huge game to end the season. Ryan, your thoughts on this game? Where are you going here?
All right. Number started at 1, jumped to -4 for Oklahoma State. So that scared me away from the spread. Whenever you got a 3-point spread like that, it kind of scares me. Under 50.5, man. I just think Caleb Williams has kind of hit his peak maybe, or he's coming back to earth, right? I mean, he had a good couple run there, and now we've seen some things that scare me off. Oklahoma State's defense is legit, guys. I mean, they 63 tackles for loss this year, leads the entire nation. The Oklahoma State's defense leads the nation in sacks, 3rd down defense. They're top 5 in total defense, scoring defense, 1st down defense, and by the way, they're the 2nd best defense in the country in red zone defense. So this game has fallen under the last couple of years. I just, by the way, who's it? Saunders, Oklahoma State's quarterback. I mean, he's not very consistent as it is. I mean, this feels like an under to me. I kind of see maybe 21-17, which I know sounds kind of crazy, but I really kind of feel like Caleb Williams is going to struggle in this one. And
what was the line set it again?
See from Oklahoma.
What was
50.5?
50.5. Okay, so that's not even a high. That's not even a high over to hit. That's just 28, 21 or something like that. Okay.
Yeah. I feel like this is going to stay substantially under. I mean, this would be my pick of the week for sure.
Greg, any thoughts on this one?
No. If it's his pick of the week, I'm all in. I'm not a huge total player to begin with, but I do tend to lean toward the under. I have a couple of buddies who are huge under players, so I tend to lean that way as well. And yeah, if you are taking it under, I will join the train with you on that.
So here,
go ahead.
I was just going to give a recap of what we have today. Alabama at Auburn. Too many points for Alabama. Oregon State at Oregon. We don't like the Ducks at home considering how they've played so far this season. Wisconsin at Minnesota. We're all agreeing that what do we do here? I went on a rant and I forgot what you guys said.
Wisconsin will cover.
Yes, okay. And then Oklahoma State at Oklahoma State. We're going with the under there because defenses are good and those offenses are overrated, at least for Oklahoma. Penn State at Michigan State. -1 on the road for the Nittany Lions. coming into a game against a team with the better record at home. What are we doing here, guys? How do you feel? First off, let's start with the line. Let's start with what we would play here this week, Ryan. And then we're going to get into the game because this is a fascinating situation, I think.
Yeah, I think we might actually – I think I spoke too soon. We might disagree here. I like Penn State this week. This is another one where, Michigan State can't stop. Their secondary is terrible, and I think it just sets up well for Penn State. I really think it's as simple as that. They got boat race last week. What's their motivation off of that? I mean, the only thing that scares me is just there are some of Penn State's players who maybe weren't sick last week going to get the flu this week, and we're going to see a couple guys out that we didn't expect. But I expect Jahan Dotson and Parker Washington to have a lot of success. I have a lot of confidence in Penn State's defense. I like Penn State pretty well here. Not as quite as the under in the other one, but this would be my second favorite if I had to put
Greg,
it that way.
What are you looking at here?
So what concerns me about this game for Penn State is just protection up front, and I'm just starting to wonder if maybe we're giving a little bit too much credit to what Penn State did against Rutgers, and have we? But Michigan State has a ton of problems too. Their top two receivers might be out. Kenneth Walker's banged up. Peyton Thorne is pedestrian. I mean, I picked Michigan State. I would not put any money on it. I wouldn't put any money on this game, period, to be honest with you. But in terms of a best bet, if I had to make one, it would be the under. I know there's a lot of people who think, and this is basically just a complete contrarian play. So the question just is, how is Michigan State going to score on Penn State's defense if Walker's banged up?
Yeah.
And if that ends up being the case, do you really think Penn State's going to score 53 points or, 45 even to cover this by themselves on the road? I don't trust this team on the road yet either against a better Big Ten team. I mean, Michigan State is not as good as what their record indicates, I don't think. But I would lean towards the under in this one, and I'd feel pretty darn comfortable about it.
So maybe it's just me, and I have a very low bar for Big Ten quarterbacks, but I want to back up to something you just said, Greg. You think Peyton Thorne is pedestrian. What have you seen from him that you're not impressed with? Do you think it's all the play-action game, and it's all read the receiver that's making him look good?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I just have never been super impressed by him. I don't think he, to me, they prefer to just have him do nothing more than turn around and hand it off. And that's his kind of a game. Makes him a very Big Ten-esque quarterback. Yeah. And, we'll see. At the end of the day, I picked Michigan State. It's more about trust issues with Penn State than it is, really feeling confident about Michigan State, but I could see this one not putting up the kind of points some people think it will.
Yeah, to me, my quick thumbnail analysis of this, I don't trust Sean Clifford to hit big plays, and a lot of what Michigan State has given up is a couple types of so their secondary, outside of being banged up, they're just an average bad secondary where a lot of things are happening at the same time between coverage busts, playing really good receivers, and obviously being up in a bunch of games. So a lot of the yardage totals, I don't necessarily buy that they're that terrible. They are not good. But some of the things that have been going against them have been the big plays, throws over the middle in certain coverages where Sean Clifford has not consistently hit those throws. Or some of the things I saw on film is the corner in cover 3, where you should never be beat deep if you're the corner on the boundary. He just gets run by. Now, Jahan Dotson can do that. But when have you seen Sean Clifford hit a go ball? So that's my concern with, is Penn State going to be able to do this? Is my trust factor with Sean Clifford to not just operate this dink and dunk zone offense and getting down the field methodically against the underneath coverage. It's can they hit any big plays with him? And he has effectively put kind of a cap of what he is on this offense. And then when Michigan State does go to a more aggressive man coverage scheme, that's when Sean Clifford typically runs. He doesn't throw into those tight windows like we saw Christian Veilleux, which is why I agree with Penn State fans that see the upside there. But it's the holistic part of this game of Sean Clifford's going to do better against more coverages. And then on the flip side, Peyton Thorne, if you give him some of those, he will hit those throws. He has shown that he can hit those explosive receivers in space. So do you trust, Ryan, which quarterback do you trust more in this game is my question to you. Do you trust Sean Clifford or Thorne more to make those plays, those timely throws that we've seen decide games for Penn State football this year when the defense is doing absolutely everything they can, and then they give one or two big plays, and that's the game?
Peyton Thorne's been pretty good in recent weeks at not turning the ball over. I'll give him that. He only has 2 interceptions in the second half of the season. So, I know it's not about making big plays, but he's not hurting his team too. So I'll give him that. To me, it's just more about the defenses here. That's just how I see this. I see a good defense with Penn State, and I see a very suspect defense with Michigan State. And I think Penn State has the talent to hang with Michigan State. They just got to put it all together. So to me, the quarterbacks are always important, yes, but I see a glaring weakness for Michigan State, and everybody else is kind of, somewhat competitive, I guess you would say, or somewhat even. And just when I always just try and find who's that true weak spot, and Michigan State got exposed last week. Penn State's going to use that film. They were getting exposed all year. Yep. They should have lost to Nebraska. There's other games. They should have lost to Michigan. So just to me, this isn't a 9-3 team. This is an 8-4 team, which is pretty much what Penn State is. I think it should be a pick 'em. One thing I will say, Greg, I want to add, I was leaning towards the under for this too. Just Penn State has just hit so many unders in recent week. I just think we're due for a change, and maybe I'm wrong with that. But that's just how I kind of roll sometimes with plays, and a lot of times it hurts me, I think. But I just feel like sometimes when we just see so many unders, they're 2 and 9, I think, on the year of over 2, under 9. Sometimes I just feel like whenever you just have those stack up, something weird is gonna happen, something's gonna change. But that's just kind of how my philosophy is with that stuff. When I see trends, I usually bet the opposite. So that's why I stayed away from the under.
So that'll do it today for the regular season for Ryan Snyder's best bets. Here is our plays of the week. We have Alabama at Auburn, Oregon State at Oregon, Wisconsin at Minnesota, Oklahoma State, Oklahoma at Oklahoma State, and Penn State at Michigan. Guys, happy holidays. Thanks for coming on the show today. I really appreciate you being a part of it today.
Always a pleasure, T. Frank. Talk to you soon, and hope everyone had a good Thanksgiving and win some money this weekend to make back those Black Friday purchases we all know are coming.
There you go. Ryan and Greg are getting you the savings on top of your Black Friday savings. So
save $1 for us. $1 for us. That's all.
That's a really great point. It's just $1. We're making you so much money this year. So that'll do it for the BWI Daily Edition this week. We'll be back tomorrow with Tom Hannafin, BWI Live, 15 minutes after the conclusion of Penn State and Michigan State. Stay tuned for that. I'm your host, Thomas Frank Carr. I'll talk to you then.